Hello, Jonathan Jimbo here. Welcome to Volume 2 of the Siege Stepladder. The format for this volume will be slightly different from last time. So what I'm going to be doing is providing commentary for what the challenge is and my overall strategy. Similarly to the last one, the commentary, at least the voice commentary, should last around 5 minutes. On the other hand, to break down everything I'm doing on video, I'm going to be doing that not with the voice commentary but with text annotations. So before we get into the challenge of this particular episode, I'd like to address one thing, and that thing relates to the last episode of the Siege Stepladder. So one thing I got from Discord, one question, is that if we're going to work towards trying to headshot everything, why would we want to practice body shots in Lost Passage? And there's a good reason for that. And the answer is to train the right mindset. And what's the right mindset, you ask? The right mindset is perfection. What do I mean by perfection as a mindset? I mean two things, combo and perfect waves. I consider these two things the foundation for scoring well in Siege. Without those two things, you can train your mechanics, you can train your headshots, but if you're not achieving those two things, then that will just be wasted effort. And why did I say perfection is a mindset, not a skill? Again, very good reason. To achieve both perfect waves and combo, you'll need to follow the number one rule in Siege. And that is, if you're not confident that a shot is going to hit, don't take that shot. You'll also need careful planning, deciding which shots you're going to take, whether to go for body shots, head shots, the order of the enemies you need to kill. The slow time is another useful thing that will help you get your perfects. I can't stress enough how useful it is for planning. As this is a Siege Stepladder, this volume, or this rung, builds on what the skills that were taught from the previous exercise. So I would say it's vitally important before completing this challenge that you have either completed the last one or are well on your way to doing so and have at the very least been able to score your first perfect wave. If anything, the previous challenge will encourage you to slow your game right down. From looking at videos of players struggling with things like scoring perfect waves, one key consistent observation that I've made is that they are often playing too fast, and that causes them to miss a bunch of shots. No planning, just reactive, fast shooting at whatever enemy comes in front of you. And don't get me wrong, I was one of those players. If you look back at my very, very first Anakin's Advanced video, my first completion of the map, I look back at it and laugh at it just because it's horrible. I mean, there's no ifs or buts about that. So with that out of the way, I'd like to explain what the abomination this challenge is about. So the aim of this challenge is to score 2 million on Saint's Approach, but there's a twist. You must score an average above 2 million on 3 or more consecutive runs. Why am I imposing such a constraint? Well, the idea is to train your consistency, because it's easy to get lucky and score higher than what you would normally score just by the stars aligning. But the real test is whether you can pull it off consistently. In fact, if you're struggling with this challenge, you could go back to the previous challenge and apply the same constraint where you want to score above the 2 million mark on Lost Passage with an average of 3 or more consecutive runs. So assuming you're able to pull such a score on Lost Passage, the next question is, how are you going to pull such a score on this map? There's a few key skills that we need to work on before we're going to be able to do that, and I refer back to what I said at the very beginning of the video when I was talking about headshotting. So in Lost Passage we weren't looking at headshots on knights, but body shotting the abominations and the skeleton. Now we're certainly looking at headshotting the abominations minimum. Are we at the stage where we're ready to be headshotting the skeletons? I would definitely say we should be practicing headshotting the skeletons, and perhaps in some of the earlier waves. Whether you should be headshotting the skeletons in the later waves will depend on how confident you are with the shot. I refer back to my #1 rule in Siege. Now, there are times you can get away with breaking that rule, such as in the early waves of the game. Later on in the Siege Stepladder, we're going to be using the early waves to be farming Cupid headshots, and they give you arrows. But for now, at this stage, I think that's a bit too far ahead of us. So instead, in the early waves, we're going to be practicing just spawning the Cupids and then body shotting them. If we happen to get the Holy Light just up the top of the stairs, we're going to be aiming to kill those Cupids over the Holy Light and get points that way. And if you have a high combo, you can get something like 20,000 per Cupid over the Holy Light. For me, for the Cupid headshots, I'm often able to get the ones that go from left to right. But again, we're not going to be practicing that as part of the Siege Stepladder in this particular volume. I still struggle with the ones that go up the stairs. In the later waves, the strategy is to get the Holy Light right at the back lit up and then fire a Tempest through the double gap. It can graze the edges of the double gap, it will still be counted as a double gap shot, and then it needs to strike the enemies in the head with the bottom of the Tempest arc. That will score a tricky ambush, and over the Holy Light, that'll give you a ton of points. You'll get even more points for a high combo. Knights are worth the most. I think Black Knights are worth even more than other Knights. And if you can perfect the wave, even better. So, to set this up, I recommend first finishing the previous wave with 2 headshots queued. This will mean that in the next wave, it'll just require 1 headshot to spawn a Cupid. Between waves, you can still put down incursion. That won't affect your headshot count as long as you've done it between waves, i.e. before you've hit the bell. From there, you want to keep spawning Cupids and bodying the Cupids until you've got the Holy Light at the back lit up. Now, there are 4 Holy Lights in Saint's Approach, and each time you kill a Cupid, a new Holy Light will be lit up, and I think it chooses that randomly. This is also where being able to headshot skeletons will come in handy. If you're not able to headshot the skeletons, or alternatively there's just a big group of skeletons that even if you can headshot them one at a time, there's just too many, you can use Hand of God. You do have to be careful though, because Hand of God can easily cause you to miss when it blinks out. I have a couple of strategies to deal with this. The first is to keep renewing it when it is likely to blink out. The other strategy is to fire a second Hand of God to a completely different location, and that will cause the first one to be removed. Once you have the Holy Light at the back lit up, at this stage in the Siege Stepladder, I recommend just going for body shots, again using your skills from the previous exercise on the Siege Stepladder, just to keep your combo until you get enemies that walk via the double gap shot. On most waves, the enemy pathing for a lot of the enemies is random, so sometimes you'll find the enemy on a particular wave will path via the double gap shot, and sometimes they'll take a different path, and unfortunately this RNG is baked into what it will take to score big. On the other hand, wave 13 is usually the most critical wave on this map, and the reason for that is there's a guaranteed group of knights, and I think some abominations can come too, although the size of the group I think is random, but there's a guaranteed group of enemies that will always path down towards the double gap later on in the wave, giving you a chance to build your combo, and you can usually get somewhere between 500k and 1.5 million, and this is not including the perfect bonus. So when you double that, you can get somewhere between 1 and 3 million just for that one group of enemies. Do I recommend using rage mode on this map? It depends. So the only time that I think rage mode could potentially be very useful is for that wave 13 shot. So one thing you can do is, as soon as that group of enemies spawn from the top right of the map, they go down the stairs, you can hit the rage mode. Now, credit to Harry Pear for finding this, but the rage mode will affect enemies that have just spawned in or enemies that are about to spawn in. Now, the rage mode will double all points when killing enemies that are raged. On the other hand, there's also a multi-kill bonus, which using the rage mode might destroy the grouping that you get. So those two factors work in opposition to one another. So while you get ×2 points from the bonus, you get less points in the way of the multi-kill. So it doesn't quite work out in practice as good as you would think. So my recommendation is, if you've still got the perfect running, it's probably not worth it. If you've already screwed up your combo, you've already screwed up the perfect, then I would say go for it. You've got nothing to lose. And that pretty much explains my strategy. The current recording is a 3.2 million run. I think that's my new record. I think in the previous season I can't remember, I think it was just about 3 million. This involved a perfect on wave 13 along with a full combo to make the big shot. If you screw up the perfect on wave 13, I mean, it's still possible to make the 2 million. If you completely screw up wave 13 and you don't even get the holy light, then, well, for me it's very difficult to then come back from that and achieve greater than 2 million. Of course, if your name is Jarek or Arby, then then you can score a ton of points from the other waves, but for me I find it hard to get much points from waves that aren't wave 13. Orphans are also important, although less important than the double gap shot holy light. Ideally you want to get the orphan over the far right holy light. You want to again hit them in the head using the tempest arrow. Alternatively, if they path the other direction, you can try and get them in a double gap shot. For this one you'll have to just graze the edge of both of the gaps, so it's not a clear path through the gap. I think that about wraps it up for the voice commentary part for this episode. I wish you the best of luck in completing the challenge.